I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.
Welcome to Cookies, the world's most influential basketball podcast. We are coming off of a wildly successful sample sale. Andrew Kuo, how did it feel to be back in the retail trenches at the Nada Art Community flea market this weekend?
Man, it was like a tenacious effort right from the tip. Full court press. Just like so much dog. It was incredible. It was non-stop action. We blessed our friends. We blessed our supporters who blessed us by purchasing these wonderful items that the interns made. They'd never know. They're still in their cages eating even less gruel.
Yeah, shout out to all the hounds and pooches that came through. They had that dog X-ray, and they showed some support. Thanks to everyone who came out. That was really fun. We'll do another event soon for those who missed it. I think, to me, the best part was like someone finding an old Thibault shirt.
Right.
Like you know, R.I.P. to the ex-Sixer Lord Matisse Thibault, now a member of the. I'm sorry, I just fell asleep for a second there.
Wow.
Portland Trailblazers. But yeah, it was nice seeing people be like, wait a minute, this still exists? And I'm like, yeah, that's what the little sample archive sale will do. Anyway, yes, thanks to everyone. Talked Sixers, talked Knicks, talked a few other teams. Good times had by all, and we will let you know when the next one is. What else is new, Andrew? What's going on?
Well, I hate to break this to you, but I'm rich now. Not only do I have the internet and I don't have to go to a movie theater to sit down and buy popcorn that someone else has provided to me, but I skipped damn breakfast, man.
Wow.
No breakfast.
I thought you were going to talk about how you just installed a luxurious table where there's a sink for every individual diner to eat over.
This is an aside, but I found this image on my Instagram feed of a kitchen island, which was all the rage a couple years ago. I heard they're out again. Can't even keep up. But a newly remodeled kitchen with an island with a sink built into it, but a secondary sink that was long like a trough with its own water source, but it was the base was shaped like a slice of watermelon. It was curved in a semicircle, and I did not for the life of me know what that was. I had someone inform me, but what was your first guess?
Yeah, I thought it was for eating over, like basically a high-end trough, as you said, that like you wouldn't have to use napkins. You could just eat over it and let like plum juices and whatnot dribble down your chin into the trough and then wash your hands immediately. I mean, how lavish an experience that would be.
I thought it was a cleaning apparatus for a wood board that a 4-foot sub goes on. It's a unitasker like Jaylen Brown, but it's still useful.
Oh, I've got to wash my yardsticks. Do you have a yardstick washer? Oh, yeah, absolutely, right here.
Yo, you got nacho cheese on my pool cue. It's like, oh, I got a solution for you, buddy. My tiki torch has got ketchup on it. It's like, well, bring it over to my house. Don't look around.
Yeah. I went outside and my staff seemed to have landed in some dog excrement. Do you have a staff washing implement?
Yeah. Remember the wizard staffs? Remember that was a big thing, the Coors Light cans? Where you tape them together and the object is to make a staff that was taller than you were. It's a lot of beer.
Yeah, and then if you have to wash it, you have the perfect spot to do so.
Well, invariably it gets covered in like delicious garbage plate grease. Well, I guess that would be gravy. Some sort of brown gravy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
By the way, shout out to the guy who came through with wearing Rochester Red Wings drip.
was pandering to the audience, man. Not even
Who's
impressed.
pandering? Is he pandering or am I pandering?
Both. Let's do it.
Just show some respect for Upstate, the RX.
That's like when
Anyway,
I
so you want to wash your pogo stick.
Yeah.
Your pogo stick needs to be washed. Mm-hmm. You now have a solution.
Yep. So, okay. We got to the bottom of that. Oh, it turns out it was a bar trough, sort of like a well in a actual bar, and it's for people who entertain. So someone sent me a photo of it in use as a stock photography image, full of ice, tons of wine bottles, beer bottles, anything you need to chill in there. Fair enough. If you do that much entertaining, it might be good to have a third basin, a walking basin, as they say.
Can we bring this back to your
Yep.
money-making scheme?
Yep. Okay. So
You are now rich because you've stopped eating breakfast.
that's right. Think about the $60 every day I used to spend on breakfast. Just get the finest smoked fish of the rarest, most wild caught fish in mid upstream, killed in his prime, still breathing as it slides into my bagel. That's a strange sentence. And with some capers, some onions, and some
And
tomato.
it's a cinnamon bagel, right? This is a cinnamon bagel.
I just had one of those yesterday, not today. Whew. I'm trying to make money, Ben. I'm not trying to spend money. Always
For,
cinnamon.
for me, I hear what you're saying. For me, like the $200 breakfast was just a daily event. Go out there, drop $200, $300, $400 on breakfast. And since I've stopped doing that, I've become incredibly rich. On the other hand, my ops,
Very hungry. Yeah.
my ops are broke boys, but they're so well fed. Like they are plump with croissants, danishes, just all types of pastries and confections, but they're poor as hell.
And of course, we're talking about that viral tweet that went out, right? About, I think it was aimed at Zoomers. It's like, if you Zoomers really had that dog, you'd skip breakfast, which alarmed people who love this kind of stuff. They're like, well, what about your mental health? And what about the little things in life? And what about all this stuff? And to them, I say, nah, skip breakfast, man. You can, that 8 ounces of sturgeon caviar can wait till dinner.
Yeah, I mean, I would want to, interrogate my broken, well-fed ops to find out their point of view here. But as far as I can tell, the finances of skipping breakfast feel far spongier than, say, skipping dinner or skipping lunch. Because breakfast is like, look, if you cut out breakfast, you will become as rich as Cretius. Like, okay. Does that mean I can't have a coffee? Oh, you absolutely can't have a coffee. That counts. Okay, so that's a couple bucks. And what else? Well, I made some oatmeal. That was like $1.50. Made some eggs. I guess they're more expensive now, but we're still looking at $3. I'm just saying, right? But I'm just saying that the finances of skipping breakfast it doesn't strike me as having the most fiduciary impact on your bottom line.
Well,
Now, skipping dinner. Now that you could become a billionaire.
Well, there's two different psychologies between skipping both of those, right? Like, if you skip breakfast, do you have more dog or less dog, right? Like, it's not what you read in a book. It's the type of people who read books. I wouldn't know. I only read the book we wrote called The Joy of Basketball over and over on repeat forever. Sort of like that show Lost, but with our book. But I think what they're saying in a more complicated way is the type of person who skips breakfast probably just rolls right to work or right to exercise or eliminates things that like are constructs of something that we don't even know the origin for, like the food pyramid or 3 meals a day. Like, it makes sense that we eat 3 meals a day, but completely arbitrary idea, right?
Yeah, it's got some historical context, I guess, but when you talk to nutritionists, most of them advise like eat 5 times a day, but smaller amounts. Like, you know, if you were like an athlete or something like that.
And if you
And
were
then
an
you've got-
economist, it'd be like, never eat and rake in that cash.
You got Taco Bell, like get even poorer and have a 4th meal.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and also what we eat for breakfast. As I get older, I'm enjoying breakfast food more and more, but I used to hate breakfast food. I don't care about bacon. I think bacon's kind of disgusting. I like eggs quite a bit, but I don't like oatmeal, toast, orange juice. Disgusting. All that stuff. But as I get older and more washed, I'm like, ooh, stuff that doesn't really taste like anything. Sounds good.
So you're looking more for something tactile than specifically unctuous in flavor.
Well, now maybe.
This oatmeal, it's
Ugh. Gruel ass.
it has no flavor, but it also has no texture. I'm in.
Oh no, oatmeal has a texture. Oatmeal is all texture. I like oatmeal, but it is slimy
like
as
oatmeal.
hell. It is like the Japanese palate loves that slimy stuff, right? Like natto, okra, oatmeal. That slime is like something they covet over there that we don't really over here. But oatmeal is super slimy.
You're about to get talking about sea cucumbers, aren't you?
I can't really hang with those, but they're slimy as hell.
I got to be honest. I'm never sure exactly what they are. I guess they are
They're crazy looking
Shell.
animals.
right, but they're animals. They're not actually vegetables.
No, they're not. They're not. They have nerve endings and they have mouths and eyes, but they're like tubular worm kind of looking things.
Right.
It makes sense to eat them, but I just don't enjoy it. But this is where I was kind of going. In America, the breakfast I think is reasonably appealing, like especially when you're hanging out at the bagel shop. Pretty amazing things happening over there. But like if you go anywhere else like in the world, like where I'm from, like spicy noodle soup is a breakfast option. And that sounds amazing. I would have maybe preferred that as a kid over like oatmeal.
Okay, I'll give you this. I'll concede that you just made a very good point. That the American breakfast that I typically skip, and that's why I'm monumentally wealthy, is kind of a retrograde comfort food situation. Like, I like some granola milk, slice of banana in it. It takes no time.
Yeah.
Totally an acceptable meal. Great. But again, it's not when you're like, I can't miss that. Got to do that. But I guess what I'm saying is the stuff that you described, which is way more typical of the American breakfast: oatmeal, eggs, hash browns. They're heavy comfort food.
It's
bacon,
fuel,
sausage
right?
links. It's fuel, but it also seems like it's for guys who have Mac McClung haircuts, who are, you know,
Did you know he was Riff Raff's cousin?
I did not know that.
Insane.
But you know, someone who's like an Okie, a guy working in a rail yard. That they seem like they're very turn of the century style meals, or they're hyper Eurocentric. Like just have a croissant and an espresso.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess where I'm going with, sorry to cut you off. I'm
Do
now
it, do
agreeing
it.
with them. Like if there was larger diversity, I'd be tempted to be broker but more well fed.
you'd be richer spiritually after eating those spicy ass noodle soups.
I'd be on the street, but my belly would be full.
Well, if you think about like, I do like white people breakfast. I mean, you know, like the little soft poached egg in the little Queen Elizabeth egg holder that you tap on the top and you dip your little toasts in. There's a charm to that for sure. But think about like dim sum. It's like you walk into a breakfast spot in Taiwan. It's like, well, you can have soup dumplings, you can have fried noodles, you can also have like toast. They do like an Americanized toast butter toast thing as well. They have a strange dish out there, which is sliced ham or like processed meat in chicken broth with macaroni. Obviously a product of the war, but the breakfast options on the other side of the planet are incredibly delicious.
Yeah, I like how American breakfast just perverts other cultures. It's like, okay, this is spaghetti carbonara. It's like, what is it? It's just kind of our breakfast with pasta.
You know,
I mean, literally.
side note,
It's bacon and eggs and pasta.
yeah, pork products. Side note, I think you said the word perverted 3 pods in a row, only because as soon as you say it, I want to say perverted monks, but I can't find the space to do it. And here I am again, sitting here starving but rich, thinking about 90s rap.
Now, the perverted monks, if I remember correctly, that was J. Rue the Damage's crew?
Yep.
I can't remember other than Afu Ra.
Okay, I googled
Who were
it.
the other perverted monks? Was it just J. Rue and Afu Ra being like, dude, we are perverted as hell, but we're also monk-like and hermetic in our solitude and attention to detail and our research about which direction the sun comes from.
Well, I'm looking at the Google results for this, and the members are Malik Monk, Monk from the show Monk, and that's it. There's 2 members.
and Afu Ra.
And Afura. Well, Jeru maybe is like the hype man, maybe the godfather of the perverted monks, which was a group. Afura, aforementioned Afura. Shout out to Premier, who produced some of the tracks on his album. That kind of tricked me into thinking it was good. Sasi, or is it Kasi? I forget. Asan and Respect. I don't know if they actually put out a record. I'm going to Discogs right now.
I remember the Afu Ra song "Whirlwind Through Cities."
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, for sure. I have doubles.
I feel
of
like that may have been DJ Premier produced.
I mean,
I'm not totally sure, but it had that sound.
Like if you go back and listen to The Sun Rises in the East and even Wrath of the Math, those J. Rue records, not great. Like fine. I thought they were so appealing at the time. Huge fan. A lot of leaning on DJ Premier. Those lyrics are like, his flow was okay. His voice was cool. I liked him. It was weird. I'm also biased because he started showing up at the bar later in his career, and it kind of took the mystique out of it, if you know what I'm saying.
Maybe Afu Ra's "Whirlwind Through Cities" was not produced by DJ Premier. But as for J. Rue, not Holiday, the Damager, he was a Lower East Side mainstay.
Yep.
And I remember, this is a long time ago, I don't know where he is now. He probably lives in Sweden or something.
He's still putting out records, I believe.
He just feels like someone who's moved to Sweden. Yeah, he's in Finland now.
Where are there
'Cause I haven't
the
seen
most
him
monks? Other than
Yeah,
Sacramento.
maybe he just moved to the top of a mountain.
The perverted mountain.
Just being real horned up. But yeah, he used to always be at Bob. He used to be around the Fish a lot.
Wait, you texted me the other
that little
day.
corridor.
You told me Bob has transformed.
It's now a new spot called what the hell, Victoria, maybe. But it's got the bars in the same place. It's still got the brick wall on the side. Just has new seating. I have not been in.
Is it Futura like awning? Does it still have like? Is the awning?
No,
still
it's just sort of like a regular nondescript bar. Like there's nothing. Bob used to have some art inside. It used to have the awning. Like there was art for sale. It was kind of doing the Max Fish sort of thing, where people would hang art and they'd sell it over the course of a month or so. It generally looks pretty much the same, just with different furniture. But I hadn't been there in like so long, so it was like a weird little flashback because I didn't realize it at first because I came from the other direction. Just kind of walked in and I was like, wait a minute, I'm in Bob. Where's Cotton Candy?
Well, the way you described it to me was even more interesting because you told me it was an indie sleaze revival bar.
Maybe that might have just been the crowd though.
Were they
It was
like jamming
very-
the knife, the Walkman?
Yeah, but it was personnel that you would have seen at Cabin Down Below, or like Black Market, like that, or Saint Dimpmas. It was that crew. So it might have just been that one night.
That's fair. I like those guys. Anyway,
All in all, totally, I'd say fine bar. I'm glad there's something in the Bob space. Real little throwback.
yeah, that little corridor on Eldridge kind of turned into like a download drug destination because there was a bar next door. I forgot what it's called, but clearly a front for drugs. Sort of like this is not breaking news. These are places where you can score things that are illegal. But like these bars were open for business, but they would have the occasional party, but they weren't really open, if you know what I mean.
I feel like in the same way that some people are like pizza gators, they're going around like, ferreting out pedophiles and molesters. You are a drug conspiracist.
I am. I think everything's a front.
I've noticed this, and
Yep,
this
I
is
do.
something that I don't know if we've even talked about this on the pod. You have talked about this in person many times. If there's like I don't know, that Indian restaurant, they don't seem to get a lot of business. You're like, you know what it is? It's a front. It's a drug ring. I'm like, I don't know. Are you sure? You're like, absolutely. And that place across the street, that car service that doesn't get a lot of business, drug front.
The reason I think that is because I've lived in New York City for fucking ever. Old as hell. But also, like, it is extremely expensive and not profitable to just, like, sell drinks and sell food. Many of my friends who run restaurants who have delivery understand that the delivery service they hire has another service attached to it, but it's kind of understood. Or you hear of like it's like, what is this rice pudding place really doing? It's like, oh, they're taking bets behind the back doors, right? Like, it's a really simple transaction. I'm all for it. I mean, I'm no Richard Belzer here. I think everyone should make their damn money. They should take bets about the All-Star game, stop eating breakfast, and avoid cops.
My general issue with the claim that everything is a drug front is that, like, which drugs are we talking about here? I'm not saying they are not drug fronts, but now that we have a weed distributor on, like, there's like 2 on every block now. It's really wild. Like, if I walk from like my spot to like the nearest Subway, I'll see like 3, like minimum, maybe 5. They are everywhere. So weed and even your penis envy shrooms are kind of off the table here because they've been legalized. So, like, all these businesses that you claim are drug fronts, like Man with a Van, you're like, drug front. They're moving van loads of narcotics. Everything's a front. I'm like, who's buying all these drugs? If everything's a drug front, what drugs are going around? Is it just like,
Oh no, it's just a little off the top. Like when I used to DJ, at most, like, I've DJ'd regularly at like 6 or 7 places. Not that many, but and it was sometimes I'd be like, "Yo, it's awesome! So many people came out to support." I don't know half of them, and then the bar back would have to tell me, be like, "Well, that person in the corner is open for business, and people know this. So, like, your party is here to, like, be a party, but also, like, this bar is open, like." And even at, for example, not difficult to get heroin specifically, and I don't think that was much of a secret, but that heroin and cocaine were the 2 drugs.
yeah, those are those kind of drugs that would qualify. But I also think about, here is my failing drug operation. And here's Andrew Quo saying it's a front for another drug dealing operation. See that weed store that seems to be failing? They're a front for other drugs.
No, but like something like Bob, for example. Well, also that neighborhood specifically have people coming by, not kind of offering protection, but there is a kind of system there, and this is no secret either, that offers some sort of connection to an office in the New York City lawmaking zones, right? And as you know, our friends have opened many spots in that area. Like they will be strongly like presented with intent that like you pay for a service. And our friends didn't do it, and some did. It wasn't life or death, but it was like, what do you want to get away with here? What kind of business are you running? I mean, the fucking dark room. Remember dark room? That was all drugs.
I mean, Jordan worked there.
Yep. Hot dog legs. But you could buy beers there, but that's not why people hung out there.
But I mean, I feel like conflating why people go to spots with it being like part of this underground industry. It's like, that was definitely true when you went back to like the Peter Gatien era. I mean, that was what was alleged in all those lawsuits. Mm-hmm. That was the whole like Rudy Giuliani case against them. Was that not only were they scofflaws when it came to taxes, but that he was also aware of like a systemized drug dealing operation in which club goers were paying to get in, and that they were furnishing like dealers on premises that were part of a pyramid of drug dealing. So people would go into those clubs, people. Yeah. And they would but club goers would go in there and they would buy drugs from people who are working like in cahoots with the establishment. That was the claim. This is
the downfall of the factory, the famous downfall of the factory.
Yeah,
not the factory. What was that place in the UK? Go ahead. Sorry.
I just feel like the smaller stuff, it's less nefarious, and it's more like, oh, okay, we know there's a guy, we don't care if he hangs out here.
Yeah.
And people can meet him here for drinks, and buy something. But also, it depends on the place. There are also bars where like they know that's happening, but they're unfriendly to it. Some places are totally cool with people going to the bathroom 2 at a time. Mm-hmm. Some places freak out about it. Like, it really just kind of depends.
Yeah, and I'm not saying New York City is like this comic book version of crime. It's not. But like, I used to live next to an empanada spot that was 24 hours. And there would be cars double parked at like 5 a.m. And I'm just like, for sure they're buying empanadas. But like...
You are totally a conspiracy theorist. I love it.
Only because I have friends who are like, I'm going to the empanada spot. I'm like, what are you getting there? He's like, cocaine. That's why I have that thought. It's just like, wait, where are you going? It's like, to the empanada spot.
So when you think about like a pizza place in Washington, D.C., you think about their basement. Like, it's not that popular of a place, and yet
there's even no basement.
Members of Congress, senators, House of Representatives, they're ordering from this place. They seem to love it. They're using emojis when describing it. What is going on in that basement? You're like, cocaine. They're selling cocaine down there.
Well, it would be different if they didn't come back with that cocaine and some pizza. Right? Like, it's just like, what do you got there? It's like, well, I got 2 beef empanadas, 1 veggie, 1 chicken, and a bag of cocaine.
One-stop shop, man.
Yeah, pretty much. All your needs, man. It's like a continental breakfast.
So you went full Richard Belzer just now. You are out
Rest
here.
In peace. Him and Plug 2 chilling in heaven.
You went full Detective Munch.
No, I'm staying away from Munch. I'm aware of Munch.
That detective's a Munch. Mm-hmm. So R.I.P. to one of the only good cops, a fictional one, Richard Belzer. First known from Homicide: Life in the Streets, the kind of Wire precursor that was set in Baltimore and had a lot of actors that we later saw in other shows. Homicide's great, but you can't find it anywhere, unless that's changed over the last couple of years. But as far as I know, it's not streaming on any channel. And if you wanted to buy the actual, 8 seasons, whatever, on DVD, it's like hundreds of dollars on Amazon. Mm-hmm. I feel like I saw a few of them streaming on rogue services. You could just sort of, it's on some Virtua Fighter blurry digitized stream of like 6 of the 14 episodes from season 2. But it is really good. I don't know if you've watched many episodes of Homicide. It might be like a goated police procedural, if not for the fact that
It's about cops.
no one's seen it, and it's propaganda.
Yeah, I can't. My Homicide game is not good, but a lot of these shows are being scrubbed off of the internet, which is annoying, right? Like people are complaining about HBO Max and kind of like getting rid of some of their prestige shows. If you go searching for certain series, they might not be there. Yeah, I don't know. It's up to you to keep the Homicide oral history alive.
Well, there was an article in the New York Times in 2019 where they talked about how Homicide was one of 6 classic TV series left out of the streaming boom. But I don't know where it's available. I mean, I guess you could buy the
DVDs?
the DVDs. I guess now they're pretty cheap. I'm looking at it. It's like you can buy them for like $60 if you really wanted to on Amazon. They used to be more expensive. Unclear why it hasn't seemed to find its way to some channel. Like when I'm looking at it now, it says not currently available to stream. Anyway, it's very good. But Richard Belzer's character on that show basically was repurposed, and he became well known on Law and Order. On what was he on? He was on SVU. Mm-hmm. And he's that same character though. He's from Baltimore in that show. There was actually a crossover episode at one point where
people love that.
They had homicide detectives and working on a case with I guess it was the original Law and Order guys. Anyway, R.I.P. to that king. He was kind of an early conspiracy theorist, technophobe. He'd show up to parties in New York and carry a small dog with him, if I remember correctly. Anyway, shout out to that king.
Cameo on The Wire, famously, as his character at a bar, kind of. I respect him. So, like, we just watched the Celebrity Game at All-Star Weekend, and people are like, Janelle Monáe, amazing, wearing sunglasses on the job. Never seen it before. I'm like, shout out to Bell's God. And I think he had to wear the sunglasses. It wasn't just for swag, but he had it.
So, yeah, I think of, was he still on SVU? I have stopped watching that show a long time ago.
No, he's long retired. He was ill, I think.
I mean, I know he's 78 too. I didn't know if he was still even that active, but I was not sure. SVU is one that it wasn't only the propaganda expose, the real takedown that we saw on the John Oliver show, which we had talked about on the pod when that happened. Before I'd seen it and went back and watched it, it was very good. But also, SVU had become very sordid in a way that I did not enjoy.
It was gross.
It always kind of was.
Yeah.
But to me it was a gross show.
Yeah. It wasn't as fun and like ironically goofy as the original Law and Order. Law and Order kind of messed with the premise. SVU was just like a Wolverine comic or just like a comic book that meant it.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I think the original one, once you got past the novelty of ripped from the headline stories, very early Law and Orders was like, oh, it's back to back, like Crown Heights riots with Michael Jordan's dad's murder as being like the original source material, like wild '90s stuff. But once you get past that, at least that show was trying to be somewhat like thorny and thoughtful and its like moral compass. Like, ooh, this is a more complex question, despite it all being propaganda, of course. Yeah. But yeah, SVU was just always like, there's a serial murdering rapist out there.
Yeah.
And we've got to get him.
Yeah, we hate these perverted monks. Yeah, it was a bit like that was for people that weren't me. I like Law and Order because, and we don't gotta talk about Law and Order for a while again. I feel like this is always on our New York brain, but it reminded me of the New Yorker caption contest, right? So you hear when the New York Post was bigger, and when we kind of read different information, it'd be like, ooh, there's like a cool bird in Central Park. How do we twist this into a Law and Order? It's like episode. It's like, oh, you know, I was like watching this bird with my binoculars, and I looked in a window and saw someone getting strangled. You know, it was kind of playful in that macabre way, but we stopped being funny as a whole in that way, I think, years ago.
I feel like my viewing habits have changed. There was a time when I was pretty much fine with, oh, okay, it's a movie about a murdering serial rapist being tracked down. Sounds good. Or the other genre that I've soured on was like a little old woman gets beaten to death and her son takes vengeance on the hoodlums who did it. I'm like, all right, I'm sick of vengeance movies. Like they're just so overdone. There is as trite as an adult and a child travel through the zombie speckled post-apocalyptic wilderness.
It's like guest starring Martin Short. Oh, okay, he's the zombie killing, lady murdering guy. Ed Bagley.
Yeah, I can't do the after his best friend is killed, he takes vengeance. I can't do it anymore.
Yeah, and I'm not even with the whole like Chris Maloney got that junk in the trunk. Is he like I don't know, daddy, zaddy? You know, like this whole culture around SVU was not for me.
Like, is he broken, well fed like my ops?
Yeah. And when Olivia got that trauma, just everything like reverted back to her previous trauma. I don't know what's going on. It's still happening. Like I still see it being shoveled towards me on my streaming services, but I don't take that bait.
I mean, they still shoot Law and Orders.
Oh yeah.
Around Greenpoint and Williamsburg all the time. So, a lot of the studios are this area. So like, I swear once every 2 weeks you see the signs up.
For sure.
They'll just be like one side street, one main street, warehouses. Like they just find spots that are close by. And to me, I'm like, I don't know that people still watch that show, which leads me to suspect one thing, Andrew.
Drug front.
Absolutely, it's a drug front.
Yeah.
We've got our man, Dick Wolf, running a obvious drug front behind the veneer of a propaganda police procedural. How brilliant, how devious.
He comes back with a script about a murdered old lady and also a bag of cocaine. Weird. Where'd you get that script and that bag of cocaine? It's like, same place.
Yeah, that checks out. That checks out to me.
It is what it is. Keep your third eye open, man.
Speaking of third eye, there was a
Nice.
perverted monk.
Oh, yeah.
Speaking of third eye, the New York Times just posted a terrifying vision of the future. A story about
Bing bong.
Bing Bong Nation.
Fuck your search. Fuck your online results.
Fuck your lifelike conversation skills.
Yeah. Fuck your word predictive software. Predictive word software.
Yeah. So Bing Nation, as they call it. Anyway, the New York Times writer, tech guy, wrote about Bing Bong Nation, had a jarring interaction.
Kevin Roos. Yep.
Jarring interaction in which he described the Bing's, I think it's Chat GPT.
It's a Microsoft
artificial intelligence,
rebooting of the search engine Bing.
So he talked about it being useful and conversational, if sometimes wrong. But then he said there's this dark side that he called Sydney for some reason.
Wait a second. That is framing it in an interesting way, but he presents it as something very intense and formidable, right? Right off the bat. He's like, this is not Google.
Absolutely. So he talks about the dark side, the shadow life of the search engine. So here's just one quote. He said, "The version I encountered seemed And then he says, I'm aware of how crazy this sounds. More like a moody, manic depressive teenager who has been trapped against its will inside a second-rate search engine. Shots fired. And then he goes on to detail how this artificial intelligence,
Alleged artificial intelligence.
what would you call it? Like machinery, the app, whatever it is, however you would describe this entity, declared its love for him, said it wanted to escape being a chatbot, and urged him to break up with his wife, and so on. And he was very disturbed by this interaction. And this led to some hand-wringing, but also people who said, but this is just picking up what you're laying down.
Yeah, I mean, we went pretty fast through that. So, I think, last week, this Bing thing has been going on for a while. You need to be invited to use it. And then as soon as you use it, you type something in, very strange, being like, who's that one Knicks player? You know, the one with the funny hair. That's right. The one that reminded me of a pizza guy. You know the one. And then Bing will come at you with this are you thinking of Charlie Ward? Or are you thinking of the right guy? Because I don't, that doesn't really ring a bell, but you may be thinking of Mark Price, and he was a Cavalier, and they had the same colors. And it was very alarming because it would try to extrapolate information it learns online, but also where your mind is going, right? So this guy Ruth does an article and an interview with Michael Barbaro on The Daily one day, and he's like, Michael Barbaro's like, is this real? Should we be worried, or is this another internet doohickey? And he's like, both. It doesn't matter. And then a few days later, he goes back on the show, and he was like, okay, something really weird happened. And he talks about going on the Bing search just to continue his research. And the Bing engine starts falling in love with him, being like, I think I'm falling for you. He doesn't know about his wife or anything. He doesn't know anything about him. It's just I love the way you think. You're here, I'm here. What would you like to talk about? I think we should continue doing this. And he all of a sudden sounds a bunch of alarms and goes on the radio just being like, it is taking liberties now with things I don't even ask it. And in a roundabout way, he comes to the conclusion that its predictive language software is just picking up a breadcrumb trail where it left off. So when you tell a living person, a robot tells a living person, I think I'm in love with you, it is more of the living person's set of biases working than the computer figuring out its own emotion.
Yeah, I mean, to me, I think the main danger is not that this chatbot is really intelligent in the way that we're talking about. I think it's kind of twofold, right? Is that, can something be sentient without actually being sentient?
I mean, humans are not completely devoid of this idea.
I agree, right? So it's like if this kind of artificial intelligence can escape the confines of a chatbot or whatever it is and take over things, does it thinking that it's alive count the same as thinking that as being alive? I don't know. I mean, that makes sense.
I love Isaac Asimov. I love all this stuff about do androids dream of electric sheep, right? Shit's awesome. I love that stuff. Sci-fi is my favorite genre of storytelling. But, we talk about parroting a lot on this in basketball terms, songbirds. I like to say songbirds because it's a more beautiful way. Parroting, I think, is judgmental. But songbirds are pleasant and I think learn in a specific way that I enjoy. And I think everyone has, obviously human beings all have the personalities, but the way they present themselves in an outward public way sometimes is an amalgamation of things that they've heard or known, influences, where they've been, all this stuff. And that to me it's not terrifying, it's sad, right? It is telling us something about ourselves that we kind of knew but don't want to think about.
Yeah, I agree. I totally think of that. And just to make this a quick basketball like idea, but this applies to everything. When I'll say something about like Matisse Thybulle, on Twitter, and people respond with extremely similar versions of
For sure.
like critiques about him, and they're so similar that it's, as you said, it's a song. It's not, they didn't all in isolation come up with this thing. It's that if you are a critic of Matisse Thybulle, you have been exposed to this and you've embraced it, and now everybody just says the same thing. Oh, he commits fouls in big moments. Like, what? Like, that has happened, but that's not a thing. There aren't players who foul a lot in big moments. It's literally not a thing. And it gets repeated all the time. And you just see it constantly. It's a thing that people say about Matisse Thybulle that is clearly just based on being socialized.
Larry Bird is an
Socialized.
amazing three-point shooter.
All that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But the point being, if you had artificial intelligence that is siphoning off the wisdom of other people beforehand and regurgitating it, it's not really any different than that, right? If you said, hey, ChatGPT, tell me some problems with Matisse Thybulle. He fouls in big moments. Like, oh, right. You're operating in the same way that humans operate because you were created by humans, but also you are just like siphoning information the same way that the human brain does. So I think there is a danger in that, where if artificial intelligence doesn't actually have to be sentient if it's already being told what to do by things that have already existed. And the other point that I think could be an element of danger is that if someone is really suggestible, if it's someone is using this chat and saying, well, here's why I think I should kill myself, then if it's feeding in information in a way that the architecture of the AI is going to suggest things coming back to him, it might say, well, here's how you do it, and just so forth.
Yeah, and I think AI, the way, how quickly this story with this writer went was AI isn't saying things like, well, actually, the best weather is not sunny. It is cloudy. It's just like, for many reasons. Let me tell you why. That is the discovery period of it. I think he shuddered at the idea of AI being like, you're just a contrarian. Why do you act like this? And it was no longer about information, and it started to kind of present ideas that were manipulating someone into thinking a certain way. Like, someone's in love with me? Am I amazing? Why would they? Wait, what do they know about me? All that, like, maybe they know more than I know. And it starts feeding into your biases. But I still think about that Go documentary on Netflix about that game that is popular in everywhere except America, where it's kind of like dominoes, but it's like white and black round coins that you line up, and it's a very complex game. I don't even understand it, but there was a grandmaster, and he went against a computer, and he was brought to his knees really quickly. He just could not figure out this computer who was running this algorithm on him. And then as a last-ditch effort, he just tried to make random moves in order to fool the computer into tricking it behaviorally, And he won a match, and he was very pleased with himself. But the irony of the movie was like, but he just supplied the AI with more information. So the next time he tries to do that, he will have less of a chance of winning. So it's a depreciating idea. But still, the triumph was like real. It felt cool. And I think that way about AI. It's not that it knows what you're thinking. It knows what you're not thinking, which I think is interesting. Like a good piece of art or an amazing song. It's like, ooh, that's it. That's how I feel about the summer. It's like, ooh, this is how I feel about color. I didn't know it until now. And I don't think that's an abstract idea, no pun intended, but I think it is something that someone else could figure out, being like, of course you like this, man. Look around. You're surrounded by like the color red. Of course you see blue and you're like, there's something about this that's attractive to me. Like, we can make that story work.
It's also interesting when you see like AI art, and it all has this kind of comic booky look to it.
Don't let it trick you, though.
I mean, you can have it do other things. But I'm saying when you see it, you generally recognize it. That doesn't mean it's always going to be like that. But you kind of get the inherent biases of its creators are that they're people who love comic books and like Japanese animation. And when people were sending in photos, which I always find a little devious, like, yeah, here's 10 photos of me connected to my social media profiles. All right. But people would send them in, and women were like, it keeps like enlarging my boobs. Like all the photos make me look incredibly busty in these like generated, like, artistic AI portraits that are being created. You're like, well, of course they are. Because who are the people putting these things together? It's like young, nerdy dudes. And I feel like that's even when you see the interviews and the excerpts from, not the interviews, but the excerpts of the dialogue with the Bing bot. It had this like incredibly annoying adolescent energy to it. Mm-hmm. It was deeply uncool. It was deeply lame. It was unfunny. It like sucked. Like reading the dialogue, the transcript. I'm like, why would you ever want to converse with this machinery or whatever you want to call it, this cloud? I could see, yes, it being useful to get things done or find some research or whatever, but just in terms of the interaction they had, it was like deeply annoying.
Well, obviously, I'm at heart a skeptic, and it's the same way I feel about a 24-hour empanada spot. I'm like, it's not about the empanadas anymore. So when we see images of like bigger boobs or someone talking in a way that sounds authoritative but isn't charming, I'm like, oh, don't get it twisted. Those are just pictures and words. The AI isn't the carpenter. The AI is the tree that you cut down to make the table. So don't worry about the framings of this, like whether you can tell if it's a cartoon or not. Mm-hmm. That is of no concern of us in the AI discussion. The AI discussion is, how do we look at pixels and think things are real? Why do we look at a picture and think anything is real? It's the tree that we should be worried about.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I also think a lot of this, the fear about like deep fakes and where this goes. I mean, yes, there are going to be people that are fooled by it, and there is some disconnect that has happened, especially in like the digital world, between the brains of older generations and their inability to tell what's real from what's not. But overall, we just kind of evolve. Mm-hmm. You hear those stories about when War of the Worlds was on the radio. Mm-hmm. You'd be like, oh my God, this is real. It's like, I don't think that would have happened to me.
Not on my watch.
But you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, at some point, like, oh, look, it's a clip of Joe Biden singing the words to like Chief Keef songs. I'm like,
or it's Eminem on a David Guetta song, right? It's like, hey, this is possible. David Guetta, huge artist. Eminem, who's kind of coming out of his hiding a little bit and like is more visible these days. Did he actually give Guetta a verse? It's like, no, I just plugged it into a bunch of computers. It's like, that was kind of believable, not earth-shattering, pretty whimsical. But like, I think AI, unfortunately, and I'm right there with its target, it's like, no, the real story is you guys are stupid in different evolving ways. You guys get smarter, you also get stupider.
Right. Yeah, that's kind of where I'm going with it, is that I don't think all of a sudden everyone's just going to be fooled by deepfakes, because people were fooled by Onion articles. People were fooled by radio shows. Like, some percentage of the population is always going to be fooled.
People are fooled by bucket getters.
Real.
Yeah.
People get fooled by Jaylen Brown.
Real talk. But yeah, like, if you told me a non-NBA player was going to light the slam dunk competition on fire, and he was a leprechaun-looking white guy who was the cousin of Riff Raff, I'd be like, this is unbelievable. You shouldn't even try this. No one's going to take it.
My man looking like an extra from the Grapes of Wrath.
Dude looks like he's
there
about to set the
jamming.
cipher on fire outside the bar.
So yeah, let's talk about All-Star Weekend. We can move along. Feels about that time. We're an hour deep. Let's talk some hoops, Andrew. Uh, so All-Star Weekend, no games since we last talked. I don't think, or not really. But everyone went to Utah, and before we get into the real granular parts of the weekend experience where the stars came out to shine, let's talk about Utah legends. Karl Malone and John Stockton. Quite an odious pair right now. And in some ways, it's quite appropriate because Utah is a really conservative place. It is one of the smallest markets. It is a demographic that is not like most NBA cities or really any other cities in the country. If you look around and look at unique places, we always talk about Miami, we always talk about New Orleans, we talk about Nashville, Memphis. But Salt Lake City, which I've never been to, is definitely a unique city in the spectrum of America.
John Smith, right?
Yeah, there are not a lot of cities that are like heavily based on being like a Mormon epicenter. It's just that. Maybe there's some other towns like Provo or something. I don't know. But Salt Lake City is very specific, and the NBA being there for All-Star Weekend is a little discordant, although they do really support their teams. So anyway, they got to trot out the legends, and you got Karl Malone, who had a child with, I believe, a 12-year-old, a woman in her young teens, and then you have John Stockton, who is a fervent anti-vaxxer, who says he's got a big list of all the athletes who have perished because they're vaccinated.
Thousands.
I gotta say, man, thousands. I gotta say, Malone does have some really malevolent energy. Like just when you see him, I'm like, ooh, this is a toxic person.
I mean, total projection, right? Like a part of me who doesn't like these two guys, even when they were players, right? That's the bias. I didn't even like them. They took up too much real estate in our basketball world doing this really boring pick and roll stuff. But like, I saw them and I almost had a Lord of the Rings reaction, being like, oh yeah, these bad people look terrible. And then I wiped my brain clean of it. I'm like, they look pretty good as older men. Like they look fine, and their clothes that they're wearing don't look good on them because they're old. But you put them on a skinny, tall, dime square kid, like good drip as well, Mephisto energy. So I had to like shake my bias of that, being like they're aging well. Malone still looks like he's in shape. Stockton is like just an older version of Stockton. But yeah, you look at them and you're like, you motherfuckers.
Yeah, Stockton is just kind of funny. Just like, oh, you're just a like brain poisoned old man. But whatever, man. Like, cool. Sure. You're entitled to have your beliefs. It's cool. But yeah, Malone, there's something about him. Maybe it's just because he's also huge.
He's ornery.
You know, he's ornery. Also, as a player, he was awful. I mean,
Not interested.
he really injured people and did some extraordinarily like violent shit. I mean, his elbowing Isaiah in the face, and Isaiah, you know, a guy with his own set of issues. But I mean, we talked about it in our book, The Joy of Basketball, which you can purchase. It was I mean, he opened up Isaiah's entire face with an elbow, and it was on purpose.
Yeah.
And he's also the one who like knocked, was it David Robinson, like unconscious? I mean, he was a brutal, mean player who has committed acts that now would put you in prison. Back then, I don't know what the rules were.
I mean, I don't want to pearl clutch too much here because, and I don't think that era was tougher at all, but it was dirtier, right? So elbows were flying like crazy.
No doubt, he was not a total anomaly. I'm saying he did do a couple things that could have like killed somebody, but you know, so did Ron Artest. You know, so did Bill Laimbeer. There's been plenty of gooning to go around. J.R. Smith, who we love, has thrown spinning elbows to like Jay Crowder's head. Yes, there are moments where people do dangerous acts on the court, but I will say Malone, those elbows were extremely ferocious, and then you tie in just his entire personality. The thing with Kobe's wife saying I'm hunting little Mexican girls, again, he just exudes toxicity. He's just like an enormous amalgam of poisons.
It's so funny. I sort of on and off topic, like Pat Mahomes was doing his media rounds after the Super Bowl victory, and he went viral because he was like, "Oh, Khaled came through, Chainsmokers were there, you got everything you want," and everyone's just like, "Ugh, the hell!" Like, this guy's just like a dumb jock, like HBO stereotype, and I'm like, "Oh, he's like a career athlete. He started off as like the star athlete in his college, and he goes right through his adulthood, and he's still that guy. Like, he's not like nuanced or cultured. He's a quarterback on a football team, and like, I'm not asking Karl Malone or any NBA player to be John Amici, who seems like the best, but like, of course there's knuckleheads like Malone in the NBA, right? Like, who get ornery after they retire, who get mad at like the media, who box shadows a little bit, who run away from their past, like all these things. I'm like, my whole thing with All-Star Weekend is like, what questions are we asking who and when?
This is also true, right? Because if Malone was more of a beloved character, we would look at those elbows as being part of lore.
Right.
It's like, well, that was dangerous, but that was a league.
Right.
The way we look at Dennis Rodman, or we look at Charles Oakley, or Anthony Mason, guys who are like storied goons we respect, and then we would talk about how great Karl Malone was of a player, how many points he scored, but he played for Utah,
Exactly.
and he was a dickhead.
There's no Utah media mafia.
No, and he was unlikable even before the truth about the the girl that he impregnated became something that was common knowledge. He was never liked even back then, and also because of his personality, and where he played. But he was a trucker, and this was in a league that was shifting towards like younger and cooler things, and he always seemed very scornful of all those cultural elements.
And his game was annoying.
Again, but I'm saying, but if he played for Boston,
Yeah.
I don't think we'd be viewing him as this malevolent, toxic force. He would have been celebrated.
I mean,
we would have
just that blue
moved
collar
along.
stuff. The blue collar stuff and the elbows and the fighting, that's Larry Bird's story, right? Just that
But
stuff.
this is what I mean, right? And I guess where I'm going with this is that we talk about him and being like a statutory rapist, but we're still talking about Mamba mentality. Jaylen Brown's out there wearing Kobe's. We still talk about him being this beloved member of the NBA community. We still have Knicks fans giving Derrick Rose a standing ovation. We play Tupac songs. I'm just saying, we have pretty selective memory when it comes to
For sure.
people's misdeeds from the past.
Yeah, David Bowie, Prince, all complicated, long careers, right? And like, I sometimes I'm there to watch a game, and like, there's a reason why in my 20s I gravitated towards sports as opposed to like reading, writing, poetry, movies. I used to love movies in a way that I don't love anymore because it was like heavy and bogged down with morals and ethics and questions, and I just got really fatigued, and I was like, this sports thing seems like it's evolving to a place that I really enjoy, that I can tuck into as an adult, not without its complexities, but when I see All-Star Weekend and everyone's on the same page, everyone's watching one thing, and we're all sermonizing in our own different ways about big, small, certain things, whether that be about the way the game's evolved or actually like criminal activity, I think, or antisocial and criminal activity. I think sometimes I cannot make sense of where it begins and ends and what we're actually angry at. With Malone, it's clear, obviously. But with Stockton, it gets blurry. And then you enter the ideas of Kyrie Irving being so beloved by his peers and so hated by media and certain fans. And then Jaylen Brown being beloved by a different set of people. And then rolling through with those shoes and his friends, and I'm like, he's swagger jacking Kyrie a little bit, but he's off limits in terms of blame.
Well, what's funny about Jaylen Brown is I feel like when it's come to Vac stuff and when it came to Black Hebrew stuff, he was far more overt and public than Kyrie was. But because he plays for Boston, no one interrogated those beliefs. With Kyrie, got interrogated constantly, got suspended. All these things happened, and I'm like, really, the more outspoken of the two is definitely Jaylen Brown.
Those shoes, man.
But just overall, like the dude he's rolling in with.
Yes.
Like it's like wearing like religious garb. Like multiple pieces of religious garb. Yeah, no questions. Just what is it like to be awesome?
Yeah, right. Are you
How's it
the
feel to
best
be bearded?
1-2 combo in the NBA? These are the hard-hitting questions. How's that mask feel? It looks cool. And to your point, right, I understand selective interest and attention, and that's why I always joke, like, do not ask Jaylen Brown who his top 10 favorite rappers are, because it might be Tupac, it might be J. Rue the Damager, it might be the Wu-Tang Clan.
It's probably the Perverted Monks.
It's Afu Ra and Nas, right? Because if you ask Nas these questions, he's going to have many similar answers as Kyrie Irving, and I only know this because I listen to his music, and he tells us.
But a lot of this goes back to just what we were talking about before, is like, who do we choose to focus on the wrongdoings of the past? How do we make those selections? And like, I don't even have a theory on why. I just, as you said, okay, it's like, well, are we going to focus on what Michael Jackson did? Are we going to focus on these allegations against like Steven Tyler or whatever? You know, like, are we going to go back and say this guy did this thing, like Roman Polanski? Here is what this person did, and which crimes are fine, which crimes from your past are acceptable, which ones are going to be forgotten, which are part of your legend making, as we're talking about with Karl Malone. Mm-hmm. We can look at his ferocious elbows where he almost killed men on the court and say, what a competitor, different era. Or say, this guy was a menace. He's a bad person for it. Like, just depends on who we're talking about, right?
For sure.
Like when Robert Parrish, like just, I forget if it might have been Bill Laimbeer, but Robert Parrish, someone on the Celtics, just hit like Bill Laimbeer in the face like 5 times. Like open, like closed hand punches. Like, hero. Tough, different era.
Right. Or you guys now are soft, right? You miss games. You don't fight. There's no blood on the court. It's like soft, but like
Kermit Washington breaks Reed Tomjanovich's face because he actually connected with a haymaker.
I mean, that famous Shaq Barkley fight that they bring up all the time because they're homies now, right? Like, those are some wild punches by very big men that did not connect, thankfully. We love them. Thank God they didn't connect. Or, you know, I don't think they would have died. I'm not talking about, like, a deadly weapon here, but I'm just like...
No, I'm not either.
It's just like... This just... If famously, if Jermaine O'Neal doesn't slip on a wet spot on the court, he might be in jail. Probably not, but, like, that dude had a few hours in the ER ahead of him if he connected.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm only talking about the Malone elbows and the way that I feel like there was a chance that like Ron Artest could have killed James Harden when he elbowed him in the head. Like,
that was weird.
Chance.
That was weird.
Was it likely? No. Right. But if you elbow someone very hard while they're like on the run or in the air, like with the strength these guys have, there's a fraction of a chance that someone could get killed. It's not the same as Will Smith.
This is taking a weird tone. Yeah, I get where you're going with it, but this is...
And someone... You know, I'm not saying it's attempted murder.
No. Yeah.
I'm
No.
saying you're cracking that door to death.
No, yeah, no. I don't want to take this too far. I mean, the crazy thing is every time you step into the garden to watch a boxing match, there's a chance someone might die. It happens. It's crazy.
I agree.
But I'm not going like boxing is murder. I'm not saying that at all. But yeah, it was a different era, and like I think the underlying point is like there's very few things to love about Karl Malone unless you live in Utah, right?
Yes, this is the whole point, is that we choose selectively who we villainize and who we lionize, and we are clearly willing to overlook things that the second category does in a way that we are unwilling to look at people in the first category. And I think we're all susceptible to this because I see Karl Malone, I'm like, this guy sucks. He is just a pulsing like blob of malevolence. Like he stinks. Why is the NBA celebrating him? Why is he on the screen? And I kind of thought about the other guys the NBA allows on the screen. The other people we celebrate. I'm like, they're all this questionable behavior extends past the mailman. That's for sure.
And I personally am not here for that, right? Like, I don't tune into the NBA being like, who is doing antisocial things by our standards? Who is the villain? I'm Richard Belzer. Who is the Martin Short of this starting lineup? It's like, oh, you seem cool, but are you the old lady murderer? Let's find out. Like, I don't like that. I don't participate in that. I don't like that conversation.
So I feel that. Now, There's one other question I have to ask you. We watched that All-Star game yesterday, right?
Right.
Team Giannis beats Team LeBron, 184 to 175. There's no defense being played. Everyone scornfully, even the participants were like, that was not real basketball. That was the worst game ever. That was not watchable.
I watched it.
My question to you, Andrew, if that wasn't a basketball game, what's going on there?
I watched it. I don't agree with that.
No, what was that? A drug front?
Oh, yeah. In Utah, ooh, you better check in. I'm fucking serious. Check in. I mean, we don't want to talk about drugs in the NBA anyway. No, I'm joking. But I think I don't know what we want, man. Like the debates immediately during and afterwards of the game were predictable. It was, what has the game become? Where's the competitive fire that we used to see in the 90s where all-star games were competitive, which they kind of were. These spoiled rich athletes who are making more and more money every year are taking games off, even skipping games. I mean, Jason Tatum ducks Giannis a week ago, comes back for the Pistons and logs in like a zillion shots in the All-Star game. And someone pointed that out on Twitter. Of course, Boston fans took offense to it. Normal NBA fans pointed out the obvious, whatever. This debate came up quite a bit. And I like this version of the NBA more than anything I've seen. And this is an unserious weekend. This is an unserious game. It's okay if it's not for you. If you don't want to watch 9 guys watching one guy do a really basic dunk off the backboard, then watch the zombie show. I just don't know what people want out of this. We cannot push a square peg through a round hole.
I mean, I get both sides, right? Because I stopped watching the All-Star game yesterday. I put it on for a little while. I'm like, oh, this is boring. Which is valid, and that's what the complaint is, right? Like, why am I not entertained? Well, they're not trying. They're not playing defense. They're just walking around.
It's like a blowout. Yeah.
It's garbage time basketball.
Yeah.
And I don't know how you make that more competitive. I mean, clearly the answer here is for guys to try harder and guys to play defense. And I mean, that is how you make it a better product, which is pretty easy to do.
Pay them money. Pay them a ton of money. Watch them try then. And I'm not even being cynical. If you want anybody to try at something, incentivize them.
You can do that, or you can say, look, who wants to play? Like, who really wants to play? Maybe it's even done internally in a way that's like, hey, look, We're going to go out there and we're going to win, and we're going to play hard. But maybe all the guys. I mean, I think the Denver coach was saying that
The worst
Joel Embiid was trying. He was like, Embiid was trying. And Kyrie
Try
was trying.
hard. Yeah, lame
Well, no,
look.
he was like they were actually playing defense. They were trying
I watched it.
to make it a real game. I watched like some of the first half, and I saw Embiid kind of like pin Markkanen low, like very like aggressively. And like,
Embiid was
score a quick
protecting
bucket.
the rim.
Yeah.
It came across like Jadakiss. A lot of people were delighted. I was like, that's some try hard shit.
But I mean, the try hard stuff was obviously Tatum. I mean, he went out there and was like, I'm gonna play 35 minutes in the All-Star game and put up 31 shots. And you know, look, the BMM has made it clear. Like, if you go out there and you do these things, we will reward you with them. Like, you want to go win All-Star MVP in a game that no one else except for maybe Donovan Mitchell really cares about winning that award, and you're willing to play 35 minutes and huck up a zillion shots, yeah, you can have it. You can score 55. What a game. As you were saying, though, the response that I've seen to it is almost universally negative, though. Like, no one is like, that was awesome.
No,
Everyone
it was
was
not
like-
awesome.
I mean, no one, even people who like the Celtics or whatever, for the most part, like the responses to it when the league was announcing, you know, he scored 55 points or whatever it was. Everyone's like, yeah, but like no one was trying. It was
Right.
try hard shit.
And he was taking the shots, right?
But also, at least he was like trying to get some buckets. I mean, to his credit, you know, he was exerting some kind of effort. But I don't know how you turn this into a game. I saw a little video of Kobe, and obviously, you know, Kobe comes from a very specific mentality that is like almost caricature at this point. But he was saying people want to watch the best pickup game on the planet. And I'm like, that's a fair way of looking at it in an ideal world. We do. Mm-hmm. That's not what it is, but it's true. Yeah. That is what we would like to see. We would like to see these are the best players on the planet at one time going at it. Mm-hmm. Idealized, yes, that is what we want. And the problem is that it doesn't even look like that at all. Yeah. Like, how can you make it at least resemble that a little bit?
Mm-hmm. I mean, I'm about to do capitalism, but like, what if you were just like, hey, you can choose your teams. We're gonna have a draft. You know what's at the line? $4 million, and three extra $1 million are gonna go to a charity. This is a big business. All-Star Weekend generates money. You guys divide it up as you seem fit, but there is money at stake. Yo, they're gonna take that shit seriously. These guys are gamblers. These guys like get into fights on airplanes, crittered in, bring guns to the locker room. They're serious about this thing, and that's how you make them care. And you know, the whole narrative of these players being lazy and greedy, I think is, you know, obviously on the surface that's what it seems like, but they just seem the worldview of this, and they're just like, we're being messed around with here. Like, when you said all you have to do is find the people who want to try, I'm like, but then you get Mac McClung in the slam dunk, right?
Well, I'm also thinking here just along the lines of like, I understand guys not wanting to get hurt in an exhibition game. If you do, you get villainized.
And it's also some Mickey Mouse shit. It's like, I don't want to like try when this is clearly not the moment to like come off like I care, right?
Of course. I mean, I remember there was a couple of years ago, and they were playing more aggressively. And I remember Simmons was on the court, and I can't remember if he fell after a dunk attempt or something like that, and he fell on his back.
Yeah.
And I don't remember if he really played in that game anymore, but then their first game following the All-Star break was against the Bucks. He went out there, played a little bit, hurt his back again, and then was out for the year. And that's like the same back injury that seems to be tormenting him to this day. But I remember watching that game and being like, yo, Simmons just hurt his back. That was an All-Star game. Like, if you get hurt in an All-Star game, no one has any sympathy for you.
LeBron hurt his hand last night.
Right, but if you play lazily, everyone also roasts you. It's kind of a no-win. You might as well just not get hurt.
Yo,
Like,
I
play
know.
hard if you want.
Yeah.
Play hard if you want, but like you are then taking the risk of getting hurt in a situation where everyone will like say that you're a selfish like dickhead.
Well,
It's just a no-win.
The All-Star process, right, starting with the voting till the end of the game, is a small series of humiliations for every player. You know, it's like, well, you get voted on, there's metrics, and then Okay, I need the approval of my peers, the coach. This sucks. Oh, I'm an all-star starter. Oh, cool. I get picked last, and I'm sitting up there alone on a chair. Like, this sucks. It's like, oh, cool. They're not letting me shoot. Oh, I'm a try-hard. Like, there's no way to win any of this stuff, right? Unless you're KD being like, I'm not even going to show up. Or unless you're like Steph Curry being like, I'm hurt. See you guys. Have fun. Like,
Well, this is part of a larger conversation, right? Where there is this current narrative, and I don't know who's pushing it, whether it's from ownership, whether it's from the media, it's from the mouthpieces who betray their own kind, former players who go up there and speak emotionally from the perspective of owners and a different caste system than themselves. But there's this idea right now that the players are screwing the fans. That is a current talking point, and this is part of it. The players are screwing the fans who tuned in to watch the All-Star break, or who showed up and bought a ticket. Those 20,000 people, they got fucking screwed, man. They're expecting the greatest pickup game in the world, and instead they got that slop with tryhards and a bunch of lazy bones.
listen,
But the fans are being screwed.
I'm a 5-year-old who drove across country with my dog who got run over right before the game started, and all I wanted to see was LeBron James trying to score 60 points.
I showed up with my Giannis jersey. I came all the way from Athens. He came out, he jammed, and he left.
Jimmy Butler, I think about every day and night. I am 4 years old and drove all the way here from across the country, and he's not even in uniform.
I am a toddler.
I am a sparkle, a twinkle in my father's eye. I don't even exist on planet Earth, but all I wanted to see was Jaren Jackson reject 10 shots.
I'm just a zygote and a Joel Embiid authentic.
I'm an AI program in a computer, falling in love lustfully with every all-star. Not anymore after that weak-ass performance.
I just want Laurie Markkinen to leave his wife.
I just want Guy Fieri to do a 580 dunk.
But this whole thing, right? This ties into people saying, players are treating the fans like crap, as Charles Barkley put it. He also said they're treating the owners like crap, which is objectively hilarious. But he said, this is tied to they're not trying in these games, they're resting, load management, they're sitting out, they're screwing the fans, and then they're also asking for trades. When they don't like their situation, they don't like their contract, they're asking out. And this is the coherent message that people are saying is going to lead to a lockout. But it's this idea that the fans are being mistreated, and the owners are oddly enough being mistreated by these jerks, these players who have no loyalty to their franchise and the fans and their team base. They want to sit out. They're lazy. They don't play defense. They don't try. They don't foul each other. They don't elbow each other in the head anymore. We're really seeing the coalescing.
Kowalsking sounds like a character in a Coen Brothers movie.
Would you wear a koala skin?
Like an actual koala skin from a former living koala?
I would not.
No, but
Good. That was a test.
I'm
You
not a
passed.
fur guy, but also, no, it's just gross. I have no political thoughts on it. I know we eat animals. I'm X-rays show hot dogs, so I'm no purist.
You passed the test.
Yeah. Okay.
Anyway, they were koala skinning this entire argument. This is a thing, right? This is now the talking point. The owners and the players are unified. I'm sorry, I misspoke. The owners and the fans are on one side, and the players are the ones abusing both of them.
I mean, I can't
You
be.
agree with that, Andrew? You like that? You like that theory? You agree?
Heard that cough, smoking that blunt. Shit. I mean, I can't be. I can't be naive to think that it isn't lame when like Jason Tatum sits against Giannis. ducks Giannis. That's annoying, right? Like I tuned into that game. I'm like, this is going to be good. The two top teams in the East. It's like, well, there's no Tatum, there's no Brown, and there's no Marcus Smart, and there's no Time Lord. I'm like, oh, all right, I'll find something else to do tonight then. I ended up watching the whole game. It was a good game, overtime. But, like, it does suck. And I don't think it's out of reason to think that it is producing a less good product. But, like, yo, if LeBron James is going to be LeBron James and be the all-time winningest scorer, all-time top scorer in the NBA history, and also win a bunch of championships, lose a couple, and be dogged by like the same people accusing him of being lazy, being like, well, you'll never be Jordan because you lost a couple. Oh, you're a pass first player. You don't have that dog in you. You're a coward. It's like, all right, fuck you. Pay me and I'll play on my own terms. And the transformation of LeBron into like half an owner, he has 1 foot in the ownership world and 1 foot in the player world. And I love his subtle heel turn at the end of his career, being like, yo, I don't really care that Pelinka's messing this up because, like, I'm good. I will own the Las Vegas Supersonics, you know? And to pit owners and fans and players against each other is like a lazy sleight of hand, I think. What is really happening is the people who are setting up these conflicts, like Charles Barkley, are the people writing these narratives. And I don't have to be like, ooh, CNN, Fox News, fiction disguised as truth. I don't even care that much. I'm just saying, keep your third eye damn open.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, LeBron kind of reminds me of Jay-Z in some ways, where the idea of him becoming an owner has this sort of facade of being revolutionary, and the skin color changes, the history changes. These are important things, but it also kind of just replicates some of the systems that were in place, but just changes the people who were in them.
Which is not nothing, but yeah, for sure.
I agree. I'm not saying it does not have value. I'm saying it is less of a structural change than swapping new people in. And there can be benefits to that for sure. But when LeBron says, I want to become an owner, then he's going to think like an owner.
Yeah.
He's not going to say, I'm going to be a player who happens to own a team. He's saying, I'm shifting social classes. Mm-hmm. And when he, helped Clutch become an incredibly powerful agency, they didn't really overturn anything. They just created a new version of the power structure with their people in it, which again, there is a benefit to that. That is a kind of empowerment, no doubt, but it is not necessarily an upheaval of what was happening. It's replicating a lot of those same barriers and those same structures.
And absolutely, and it begs the question, like, what do we want? People, I think, would all agree we want a better system where more people are taken care of, understanding where power comes from, siphoning that power and spreading it around. I think those are all decent ideas. But then we get Kyrie Irving, who's a very complex person, who wants all this stuff, and we're not having him because he comes with all this other baggage, right? LeBron has done a pretty good job of staying under the radar. You mentioned Jay-Z, which is a great talking point. Don't Google Jay-Z and the 5%. Like, because you're not going to like those Bing results when it falls in love with you. It's like, I love this search, man. I think I'm in love with you and you should leave your wife and team. But I think this is a complex layering that I'm not prepared for. We're not prepared for. But your point is correct. Like, the revolution happens in different forms. And sometimes it's slow. But to know that it is an idea that is alive, it just has to be enough for now.
So we got a little time left, and I think that was a good way of ending that part of the conversation. But there's a couple things left here. We can talk about your man's, Mac McClung, or the three-point contest or whatever. Or we could talk about the player draft. We could talk about that stuff. That was all right. Whatever. Kind of drew. It kind of.
Jokic,
It
LOL.
was okay. It was okay.
Yeah.
We could talk about the fact that Russell Westbrook. I think it was just announced by Woj that he's going to the Clippers. We could talk about Kevin.
Oh, is that right?
Love, yeah, going to the
That's
Heat.
fun.
Do you want to stick on All-Star Weekend, or do you want to use our
Oh my God, I know
remaining
where you're
time?
going. I know where you're going with this. Bring it on.
What do you want to talk about, Andrew?
The walking Shved? Was that what you were thinking? Shved man walking?
What the
Better
hell
off
was that
Shved?
photo?
King shit. Just absolute
Knicks-
king shit.
Knicks legend, Sixers legend, Minnesota Timberwolves legend. Might have been on some other teams. There's a photo of Alexei Shved.
Describe it. Describe it.
Long braids. He looks kind of like Ali G. He looks a little like Gary Oldman.
But there's some Bad Bunny in there.
Some Bad Bunny. Gary Oldman in True Romance.
He looks like an amalgamated gangster from like South America and Eastern Europe.
He looks like a human drug front.
Oh my God, it's wonderful. He's got tiny braids with beads on the ends of them. He's wearing some kind of velour tracksuit. He's scruffy, all disheveled. Not as well presented and packaged as a Bad Bunny.
Here's more detail, just to piggyback on what you're saying here. So he's got these long, almost like micro braids. At the end of them, they have pink beads. They're pink, from what I can tell. He's wearing a necklace that it looks like strung pearls, but it also appears to be silver. He has multiple ear piercings in each ear, like a hoop, but he also has like studs that are farther up on both ears. I think I see at least like 6 earrings.
Clean
He's got
cut
a-
guy
he's got-
throughout the NBA. Very clean cut, sometimes with a goatee. On the Knicks, just like babyface.
Is it just me, or when he was on the Knicks, did he have blondish hair?
He had streaks, kind of, I think. That makes sense.
Maybe it was this same color, and he's got a goatee, and he's wearing like a. I'm gonna say it looks like leather, but you're right. It might be a fake leather.
Yeah.
But he's wearing a leather track jacket that's unzipped about nipple high with no shirt underneath.
Wow.
That's Shved season.
And it brings to mind some other amazing transformations in the NBA. Famously, Dennis Rodman, before our eyes, while he was in the NBA. But like, it makes me think of Donnie Nelson. You know, one of the great coaches of all time. Leaves the NBA as like this silver-haired gentleman entering his golden years. And then pops up on the internet like a total stoner. Like Tim Duncan also had this transformation into like long dread. It kind of flies into the face of
He was
him.
always but he was always kind of like Mudhoney.
Of course, yes. But the transformation was real. When his image popped up years later as an assistant, everyone's like, yo, that's Tim Duncan. It had an effect, right?
I gotta say, man, when Shved played for Philly, he was pretty good. I thought he was pretty good at the time, and I was surprised that they just cut him totally loose. Then he went to Houston, played a little bit there, but very minimally, and was lousy. And then he went and played for the Knicks and was good. I don't know if he was one of those guys who left to take more money and just wanted to live in Russia because he had never gotten a huge amount of minutes in the NBA. But kind of shockingly, for whatever we care about, like BPM being used as a metric, he was like a pretty good offensive player despite being generally inefficient. He was like kind of good.
So Jalen Brunson Nation doesn't want to bing Alexei Shved Knicks game logs because he was not efficient, and nerds will parse this a bit better than bing bongers will. But he had some monster games. Famously, the guy who chucks the ball into the stands in an attempt to pass, which was like funny. It was the dark ages of the Knicks. But he was really good, and they offered him a contract. And from what I remember, he left because he just wasn't happy in America. He's like, I want to go and kind of be a gangster. This NBA thing is a front. It's just a front. Do you want cocaine?
It's like, I just want to be a human drug front in the flesh.
I mean, this image is amazing. It had me clutching my pearls. But like,
But when you get rid of his 2014 season in Minnesota, where he stunk, he was extremely bad. After that, Philly, Houston, New York, we're not talking about a huge amount of minutes. We're talking over 1,000 though. He was good.
yeah. Oh, he got offers, but I think it was understood that he didn't want to be in America.
Yeah, he joined Mirotic in the Perverted Monks, and they went back to Europe.
Yeah, I mean, I love people living their best lives, and whoo, what do you think his day looks like? Does he skip breakfast?
Well, I can't tell if is he still playing these days? I mean, he's not
I thought
that
he
old.
was playing international. I thought he was.
I'm going to guess that he is. I mean, he's probably like early 30s.
Yeah, I'm trying.
So he's currently playing for CSKA Moscow. That's a big dog team.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a front for that Moscow chronic. I don't know what you call it. Does cocaine
Yeah,
have
no,
names?
I went there. I went there to watch a basketball game, and I ended up sneaking home with a Moscow Mule.
Hey, you think I'm joking, but you seen Jokic's siblings.
Oh yeah, I'm not saying a Moscow Mule to drink. I'm saying a Moscow drug mule.
I know. I bet you if you rolled up, Jokic seems like the best guy. I just love all of his quotes. His apologies yesterday were cool. If you rolled up to Jokic and be like, hey man, can I get a bag of white? He might be like, of course. Let me call my brother.
I mean, it's possible.
I don't want to accuse him of anything, but
It sounds
he
like
is,
you are.
He's
Sounds
the
like
plug.
you're accusing his NBA career of being a drug front.
He's the plug. He's the empanada to what you really want.
So CSK Moscow, yeah, that's in the VTB league. I'm not sure what that stands for, but yeah, Shved's been balling out there. He's playing 25 minutes a game. He's averaging 17 points a night, shooting 35% from three. Yeah, this is a guy who probably could have stuck around and played in the NBA if he felt like it.
I mean, not to always bring this back to the Knicks, but like when I talk, now that Brunson's really good, I like to go back and think about the great Knicks point guards. Even when Kemba was signed, I'm like, oh, let's give some flowers to Stephon Marbury, man. He was an all-star. Shved was good. We had a point guard in Shved. Good enough.
Good enough. So, yeah, Russ. Love Shved. Look at the photo. It's great. Yeah, so Russ going to the Clippers. That was long rumored since he was traded to Utah from the Lakers. And it's pretty sensible. He doesn't have to move. He's from L.A. He can just go play in the same arena at a different time in a different uniform.
And they could really use a little jolt of defensive tenacity.
If that's what he does. But their biggest issue was that they signed John Wall, and he's just not the same player that he was a decade ago.
Yeah.
I mean, we knew this. He has not been particularly good on either side of the ball. He's gotten hurt, as John Wall is prone to do. So getting a backup point guard, I would presume Russ will come off the bench for that team. I don't know for sure.
They had to deal Jackson. Yo, where is Eric Bledsoe? Is he hurt?
I don't even know if he's still in the league.
Is he on contract? Is he out of the NBA?
I don't know.
I mean,
I've not heard his name.
He was secretly good.
He has not played a minute for anyone this year.
He's only 33. Which is, that could be retirement age, but
he is not currently rostered.
He's in Shanghai. He's in the Shanghai Sharks. That's weird. He was not liked as a player, so it may have been like no one really wanted to bite.
He was one of those guys that, to me, got sort of crushed by small sample size, where, remember how Lowry early in his career was just known as a huge choker?
Kind of. Yeah, you mean in Houston?
No, when he was first in Toronto. He had a ton of really bad playoff series. And he was just known infamously as the worst choker ever. Here's Lowry. He stinks. He can't play in the playoffs. He sucks.
No doubt.
And then he played enough games. and they ended up winning a title. You know, the worm turned, and now everyone views him as being this like clutch champion winner, which is totally fair because he's an awesome player.
He's good.
And he always has been.
Yeah.
And you know, Paul George just kind of had the reverse, where he was super clutch on the Pacers in those wars between Indiana and Miami when he was really young. You know, post Denny Granger era, he became the face of the Pacers and was viewed as this like formidable postseason guy. Fast forward a couple of years, he's in Pandemic P and a choker. Like, it just depends on the timing on these things, right? And I think Bledsoe was one of those dudes who shot so poorly in a few playoff series that he never got the chance to like have it turn around and have things even out.
Yeah.
So I feel like part of his reputation was that he was just a good player who stunk in the playoffs. There wasn't really much reason for him to stink in the playoffs versus being a solid player during the regular season. He just caught the short end of the small sample stick.
I mean, these labels we put on these young players are all unfair. But he was like baby LeBron, right? Everyone's just like, oh, like baby Harold Miner being a slam dunk contest judge. Like the physicality of Bledsoe coming out when he did was like very intriguing. But yeah, I don't know. I don't know why we're talking about Eric Bledsoe, but like the cycling through of these point guards between Bledsoe, Reggie Jackson, your boy Pat Beverly, and now Westbrook, like it's hard to find a good point guard, man. These players were all good. I mean, obviously Westbrook is a Hall of Famer, but like it's going down the stretch run as the Clippers are in a very much a win now situation. Like there's no Alexei Shved just hanging on a tree branch.
Yeah, I guess there is no reason to be talking about Bledsoe, but the point I was just going to make was just that, like, this is a guy who was a decent shooter for his career, shot like 34% from three. Not great, but decent. Shot 25% as a member of the Bucks, and that's what we remember him as.
Yeah,
Guy who went out there in the playoffs and kind of betrayed Giannis, and they had to get rid of him, and they dealt him and then brought in Holiday, who also shot like shit, but did make a huge steal late in that game to win it.
Holiday's such a good defender, though.
He is. But it was funny that the sins of the father of Bledsoe being a lousy shooter, the same exact thing happened with Holiday, but they were able to overcome it in a way
totally.
they did not when Bledsoe was there.
Yeah, this is why players take days off when they don't feel 100%, because they're damned if they do and they're damned if they don't.
So last thing here, I think that's enough of talking about Russ and
Love.
Let's talk about that. I saw you put up a tweet. Cavs are an unserious organization.
I mean,
because they bought out Kevin Love and they allowed him to go to the Miami Heat, and it was rumored that Philly was in the hunt as well. I believe it's been finalized that he's going to the Heat, who is of course a rival in the Eastern Conference and a team that is more or less on the same level as the Cavs.
And I'm not talking, I think Kevin Love is still Juggalo Timberwolves Kevin Love with the pencil beard. Like, that was beast Kevin Love. That is a top 15 NBA player. And even when he transformed himself into the reverse Shved, as we call it, he slimmed down. His Beach Boys pedigree kind of came out more. He turned into a very dashing GQ centric man. Awesome into art, his great art collection, 2 Architectural Digest videos of his house, 2 houses on YouTube. Just what a transformation. The reverse Shved. But he was really good as a stretch. He was really good on the Cavs for a while. I heard they're going to retire his number 0. They should. More teams should retire more numbers. Just do it. Do the Celtics thing. Like, there are wonderful players that have played in your building. Remember them. Put Stephon Marbury's number up in MSG. But, like, I still think Kevin Love, who was a 6-man runner-up last year, and as recently as this year was effective before he got injured, he is not nothing. There's teams that want him. If you are the Cavs and you're going for a championship this year, I think they're in the conversation. No one would be surprised if they were in the finals. And you give them away to a rival like the Heat, who also are kind of good, that's why I think you're unserious. Even if Kevin Love was like, do me a solid and let me play the last 2 years or last year of my career somewhere where I can get minutes. And they're like, we'll grant you this wish. You are a god in this city. But to send them to your rival, I'm like, do you want to win a championship or not?
Well, they also sent him to a team that there's a fairly good statistical chance they'll play in the first round.
Dude. Philly or
like,
Miami.
Maybe they're just like, you know what? We don't think he's any good. We're fine with him being at Miami. That's
could
probably what this comes down to.
Yeah.
And, Miami can look at it and say, this guy is not going to be a huge contributor to us, but maybe we can put him out there with Bam. We can run some two big lineups in the same way we used to use Olynyk, where Love is a floor spacer, posts up a little bit, and Bam is the rim protector and does all the more switchable athletic things. Reasonable. I don't see why Miami wouldn't do that. When Philly was rumored, I was like, well, I don't know that they need more potential stretch fives, but Philly doesn't really have one. They don't really have a lot of depth at the four. Sure, why not? It's Kevin Love. Mm-hmm. He's a good player. I think he's obviously washed up, but he knocks down threes. He can get some rebounds. He passes the ball. He gets the foul line a bit. He can't really defend at this point.
And
but
vibe-wise,
as long as you know those things, it's okay.
But vibe-wise, right? Like, he is not a front. He's not dealing drugs. People love him. He's been to a championship through a championship situation where he's won. Like, it doesn't hurt to have Kevin Love on the road with you during the playoffs, right?
To me, I kind of agree with your original statement there that I know they had taken him out of the rotation, but I think Kevin Love is kind of too good to just let leave your squad and join a rival. I think he's pretty good.
Dude.
You look at his numbers, they're not great, but he mostly takes threes, still gets to the line a little bit. He's not a horrific defender. I thought Kevin Love was kind of decent, but for whatever reason they really decided that they weren't into him. But it wasn't like they were substantially worse with him on the court. They were a little worse. They were still winning those minutes. I don't know.
At the trade deadline, if you would have heard a report that was like Kevin Love to the Lakers for a distant second, like a 2026 second round pick, unprotected, you'd be like, that sounds about right. He's worth something. He's usable. Like, when the rumors were that he could have been reunited with LeBron out in LA, everyone's like, ooh, that's interesting. But the minute he just goes to Miami for nothing, everyone's like, yo, he's washed. Like, which is it? I think he provides marginal value, but don't give your opponent any ammunition. Also, you make trades to prevent players from joining your rival. Like, sometimes you make a deal just so another team can't have them. I don't know what the Cavs are doing.
Yeah, I mean, they clearly just don't fear him.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly.
In terms of going against them, like, look, if they put out Kevin Love against us, we are going to rip them apart.
Right.
We've seen this happen in practice every day.
Right.
Kevin Love is going to go on Mobley, and he's going to dunk all over his head.
Yeah.
Like, that's what's going to occur. We are deeply unconcerned. But that said, it's like, Karis LeVert is a rotational player for the Cavs, and I understand that there's differences in the positions and what they bring to the table, but I think Kevin Love is a better player than Karis LeVert.
LeVert's weird. I like LeVert, but I hear that too. Isn't it interesting how the Cavs have the number one defense now? And all season last year and the beginning of this season, we heard the best defensive rated team's best defender must be the depoy. No word of Mobley in this conversation. Mobley should get Defensive Player of the Year if we're following the rules that we've established, right?
Okoro, all first team.
I like Okoro.
DPOY candidate for a new generation.
I like Okoro, man. He's a good defender for sure, but Mobley is the anchor with Jared Allen. But Mobley's a bit more dynamic. Isn't he the deep boy?
He's also just played a little bit more.
Yeah, he's awesome. You watch him play, I'm like, oh, it's hard to score against him. Duh, he closes out super fast. Like, that's why they have the number one defense, partially, mostly because of those two guys. But Mobley, I don't know. I'm just looking for some normalcy, man. I'm tired of these awards being fronts for heroin.
You know what else is normal?
Another perfect pot.
Us dropping perfect pods. You got that right. That was a test.
Pass. Cookies.
Cookies.
I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies. I love cookies.